So, this panel is about making it in the US of A. And going to do a quick show of hands for the founders here, or for anyone, who would like one day to conquer the US market. What? Yeah, what? Yes, exactly. So these guys are people who have done it, or are in the process of doing it, all in pretty spectacular ways, actually. So we have Diana Avila, who's the head of expansion at Wise, which I'm sure you all know, but is the cross-border money transfer company. Has 11 million customers and 5 billion a month in payments, and is doing a mega expansion in the US right now. We also have Alistair, who's the founder of Hero, which connects online shoppers live with associates in physical stores, which was bought by Klarna in July. And Alistair has done 2 different stints in the US. He's been there for about 7 years, scaling businesses there, most recently in 2017. So he has lots of insights. And then we also have Al-Karooni, who's the founder of Globechain, which is a marketplace for connecting businesses who want to get rid of items like office chairs or stuff like that, stuff they don't want, with SMEs and charities who want it. Plus they do ESG data. And May moved 2 years ago. And is in New York and is also, taking the market by storm. So these people have done it, and we're going to learn from them, and it's really exciting. So Diana, I wonder if we could start with you, which is just like, what did you wish you knew before you embarked on this, mega expansion in the US? Like, what are the big challenges? Tell us, lay it down for us.
Yep, thank you. It's very good to be in a panel in person after so long and not in Zoom and being on mute. So to give a bit of context, in Wise, we are offering our products to the US market since 2013. So we're not necessarily starting our expansion now. We've been expanding for many years already. We are at the point in which we continue expanding products continuously to our markets. The US has become one of the main markets for Wise, and we continue expanding in terms of building our local team. And this is probably where we are also engaging into opening our 3rd office in the US. At the moment, we have teams based in Tampa, Florida, in New York, and we are expanding to Austin. So just to set the context. Now, to answer the question around challenges or things that we wish we had known before starting to expand or continue the expansion or scaling our presence there, I'll probably focus on 2 challenges. The first one is hiring in the US, and the second one is understanding that, especially for a regulated business, a financially regulated business like Wise, when you go into the US, you're actually pretty much working with 50 different countries, which is very different from the UK or even before Brexit, when it was simply operating in the European Union. So covering the first one, hiring is a highly competitive market. So when you decide to go and build a team over there, and this is important if you want to actually understand the market and if you want to deliver the products that are localized for this market, if you want to provide customer support to customers in the same time zone, then most likely you're going to be thinking of hiring there, and is highly competitive. And I believe this is not a surprise for anyone, but having done this for many years and having gone through several iterations of, advertising job descriptions and going through rounds of interviews and understanding what are the salary benchmarks in New York or San Francisco versus the salaries that we have in London or the rest of Europe, that's challenging. And of course, knowing that you are competing with the big tech businesses in the US, but also you're competing with 1 million startups that are starting in the US or similarly are also expanding from other countries, that means there's a high demand for the same talent, and putting your brand and making sure that the brand is also recognized not only from consumers and potential consumers, but also from the talent that you want to acquire to build a team locally. That takes time and takes a lot of effort. And in our case, for example, we have gone through trying to do all the recruitment from our central teams out of London and Europe, and that means we lack expertise and knowledge of how the market operates there, what are the companies that we should be targeting, which are the forums that we should be participating in order to raise awareness and visibility of the brand in order to build a team. And the second challenge,
Can we just stay with the hiring point for a second? Because I think that's like super interesting and super important. And I'm sure everyone is going to have a view on this. But like, can you say like how much more money should you be like thinking of paying? Like, what is the delta between the like European salaries and the US salaries? And when you first how shocked were you when you first looked at those?
Very shocked. Very shocked. I would say it's at least 50% more, between 50% to 100%, depending on the type of role, depending on the location as well. But yeah, I would say that's pretty much the premium. And I think it also took us some time to be okay with this within the team and being able to explain to the teams how benchmarking works in different markets and how you might be doing a very similar role out of London versus doing that similar role out of New York, and the salaries are going to be completely different. And then having that conversation around with the teams around, okay, if you want to relocate to New York and you have the expertise of the US market and you're going to be the person that is going to help us conquer the US market, then you're going to get that salary. But also when you go to New York or when you go to San Francisco, in my case, I went to New York in October. So that was my first trip for work after the pandemic. You kind of see why those salaries are so high, because the city is expensive. And if you combine this high demand for talent with cities that are expensive and even more expensive than London, which we believe is not like a cheap city, then you see where the premium is coming from. So yes, it's important to be prepared for that. I think it's hard to be prepared. But that's the reality. And in some cases, what we have done also is to help build the teams. We have also relocated people from Europe, but you cannot build a team only with relocations. And even when you relocate, chances are people relocate with the same salary or similar salary, but very quickly, of course, you also need to benchmark against the salaries in that location.
Alistair, May, you've both hired tons of people in the US. I saw you're nodding along, so I'm going to assume you agree with the salaries being higher. A, does it matter? I mean, ultimately, you're in a bigger market, so there's more money, etc. But B, what are the other challenges of hiring there? And I'm thinking the idea of just the brand. I mean, maybe it's even hard for you guys, but you guys are obviously a huge global brand. People probably would have heard of you guys even in the US. But even with quite large European companies, I imagine you might get treated as some foreigner, maybe might be harder to hire as well. May, what's your...
So one thing actually I just want to, I don't know if everyone's aware, but 5 years old in the States, they do show and tell. So every person is a salesperson. So if you think it's hard interviewing people here because they've got it nailed with a CV, it's even worse out there because they're all awesome and amazing and they want really high salaries, and you could be getting an average person. So there's that element to look at for sure on that. Definitely salaries way different, so I think research, but you can be really smart with how you go out there, right? Like mistakes I've seen of other startups going there is just hiring straight away. Don't do that. For a while, I was traveling over quite a bit. So I understood the market, and we were selling that way. And obviously with COVID, it was very remote, and we went over with large corporates that trusted us here and were established here, so they knew us out there. So their counterparts basically were paying us almost immediately. You know, there was no kind of free trial going on. So you have to be quite direct in that sense. So I'd say just be really wary of that, and definitely if you do have a budget and you raise for the states, bear in mind that each state technically is a country in the sense of money. You know, and there's brokers involved and everything.
Do you think you should be? So you're saying you should be careful about like. It's like the challenge of finding product market fit in another country, and don't assume because you have it in one country you're going to have it in the States.
I basically looked at myself as in like, you don't know me. I've got to evangelize all over as if I'm a startup from scratch, and I know the template that works for us here after growing it for so long. So it's basically a replica of that. And the beauty of the US, it's same language, so there's a slight culture difference, obviously, but, you know, as you go along, and, you know, I'm sure we'll come to a conversation around, like, friends, but really I found referrals a really powerful way. Like, if they believe in you or friends believe in you in the States, just make lots of friends and say yes to everything and go out everywhere. But they're actually more open to referring you to people, I find, than here.
That's interesting. Alistair, so what about finding product market, and we sort of touched on this, but like, what did you wish you knew about finding product market fit in the US before you did it twice?
So, yes, it's really interesting. Actually, just the concept of product market fit brings most founders out in cold sweats because you're never perfect, right? And something you have to continue to work and evolve on. But a few things, I guess, early learnings in going to the US, which is, you've got to embrace what is like society norms that are different to where I'm quintessentially British, grew up just south of London, was taught to be modest. I know you're thinking how you wear that jumper and still be a bit modest, dress for Christmas, but taught to kind of be humble, a little quiet. And actually, the US, like the land of the marketeer. Just watch the Super Bowl and the ads in the middle, and it's blatant as well, and it's aggressive, and everybody wants to have a competitor because they get to talk about them and how they're different and better. And so I think it's like embracing that rather than rejecting or figuring out how you can move around it, embracing that. And so come to product market fit, yeah, you can turn up and pitch your product. Number one, get someone with an American accent to do it, because this twang wears off really quickly in an American boardroom. They're like, you're probably kind of small and we don't know if we can trust you, whereas the guy that went to UPenn or whatever, they're like, we like him, he's good. So immediately appoint a US leader in commercial, for example.
So there isn't like the charming British modesty, you know, like, oh my God, are you British? You know, let's say something cute, say something in British, like that doesn't, that get to your first like 2 minutes smile, and then that's it.
And also, much to my disappointment, so many of my fellow countrymen and women had beaten me to it. It's like, oh yeah, we've got loads of British expat friends, we don't need another one. So I had that a lot actually, but no. It was for me. I was like, not to disagree with you at all, mate, but I actually rushed in on both occasions and immediately appointed some local colleagues that were born and bred US of A, and particularly if they had the network. I think everyone's made that point. If they had a network, is a real positive thing. But you know what? Back on the earnings thing. It's not just salary. Actually, I found that you got to think about what people tell their loved ones, their friends at the dinner table, right? And about their joy. It's not just about a basic salary. People talk a lot more in the US about their package. So things like the options and the RSUs and healthcare. I brought in healthcare for UK colleagues, like Bupa or whatever it was. No one cared because it's a young team. No one's even thinking like that. They're like, great, we don't value it at all. I'd just like a 5% raise, actually. Get a good healthcare plan in the US and people will leave their companies for that. More powerful than putting more cash on. Sorry to take you back, that wasn't my intention. But I was thinking that as we were speaking.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. So do you offer like bigger pack? Is that package thing like something on your mind as well?
Agree on the package thing. So yeah, it's not only salary. I mean, in Wise we don't do bonuses, but then yeah, like it's more common to expect a bonus in the US. When it comes to RSUs or options, it's also understanding the detail. What's the difference between a stock option and an RSU? And to May's point about when you're interviewing people, I mean, like all the time an interview should be a two-way, but in the US, be prepared to be interviewed and be prepared to understand the market, because I have been through interviews in which candidates, of course, after you go through their technical expertise and skills and career expectations, they would go deeply into the package and understanding RSUs and what is the healthcare, and in terms of the pension program and paternity leave. Those are the type of things that people care about, and they expect you as the hiring manager, as a person that is expanding, to know what is relevant in their market. So if you go with the mentality, well, we have NHS here, and if we get some health insurance, that's nice to have, but I'm not going to move jobs based on these. That's not the case there. So you need to understand what matters for the market, so you can present it in a way that is attractive enough for people to consider leaving their job and going to your company.
How do you work your brand, May? Your like to win customers. So you not to win customers, sorry, to win employees.
Yep.
So you're not treated, so you're not competing just on price, but you're, an exciting thing to work for compared to, as Diana said, the 10 million startups that exist there.
Yeah, so obviously we've got a bit of an advantage because we're marketplace, so we don't, have any assets, if that makes sense. So you go on the website and you've got to understand it straight away. And one of the best bits of advice that I got actually from the Department of Investment in Trade. So there's people specifically, if you can talk to them just to get a bit of an insight into how to get to a particular sector, like retail sector, construction, whatever it may be. One of them said to me, it's really interesting, you've got no American flag on your site, even though we had like US and you can search US and there's US items. But actually that really struck, because they're very kind of like, the flag, and as you said, Alistair, like we don't stick our flag outside our houses, right? So that kind of in your face, like an image, a photo. Obviously, you've got the dollars and all that kind of stuff, but definitely think about the visuals on your branding and how you position. So if it means tweaking a proposal or the way you kind of speak on an email works, and they're very direct, right? So no talking about the weather, just like straight away, thanks for the call. This is what I want, and can you help? And they're very open when you talk like that to them. So definitely there's that, but I'd say, a founder being a bit of a control freak, I like to see it first and see the market and understand it, because it's all about psychology at the end of the day. If you can understand the culture and psychology, it will take about 3 months, like on the ground. You can pretty much suss like what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Like I remember once I sent a deck and to a friend to refer it to someone, and they were like, "Can you Americanize it?" And I'm like, "Just change the dollars." And then I got like a side WhatsApp going, "No, it needs more dudes and awesomes in there." And I was like, oh, "Okay, let's change it." It was kind of half tongue in cheek, but you've got to think about these things. It's just slight different ways of communication. When I write an email, I'm like, "Hi, I'm the founder." They love founders, they love testimonials. If you can have American companies in there, I always talk about American companies we've got on our books. There's real prestige. And also, as a side thing, government contracts are seen very differently to here. They have a different way of kind of accelerating certain programs in different states. So to get a government contract, which it's almost like an incubator accelerator, like an innovation side for government contracts, they see that as quite respected. So that opens the door to corporate contracts in a way. So there's different angles that you could work on, and just keep, you've just got to be really obvious with the brand, really don't overcomplicate it.
And do you think the advantage of government contracts is partly because you sort of need more credibility as a foreign company, like those like stampers of we're like a legit one?
It's kind of a trust, and also they really respect the military there. Got a lot of military friends. Hey, I'm in the military, and now I'm like global head of blah, blah, blah with no experience. And weirdly, it gets you through the door, and I just think you've got to use that. And also branding, like, for any females in the room or ethnic minority, it's really big at the moment. So I'm just abusing it big time, because we haven't, they're loving it at the moment. There's all these diversity and inclusion departments popping up. And, people are having to prove all that kind of thing, and their ethics. So find like your niche that you fit in that, and go for a department that you wouldn't necessarily position yourself in as a brand, just because there's so much noise and you're evangelizing all the time. You're basically like, hey, I'm here, I'm amazing. That's like basically, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I want to pick up just on 2 points there. One, the like personal branding. Would you both agree that was, that's obviously like a quintessentially American thing. This like being able to step up and like say how awesome you are personally. Is that something that you both have had to sort of finesse and develop from trying to win the US markets?
Well, I mean, contrary to how I tried to position myself at the beginning of this panel, I'm not humble at all. I'm rather brash, and so I fit in perfectly in New York. But yeah, I think you do have to think about it. I don't know what you found, but as soon as you say I'm the CL founder, there's an expectation that you're going to step up and do something magical, and people want that from you. They want big claims and bold remarks, and for you to live up to them, of course. But I never found that like a negative or a chore. It's actually an opportunity to take the stage and really push your business. And for me, I guess that's why anyone will get on a plane to begin with, right? You went there to grow a company. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah. Do you feel you were like needed to like build your personal brand more there? Would that be advice you'd give to founders?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I'm not a founder, but leading our expansion and trying to hire there and understanding the market, I wouldn't necessarily say is too unique from the US. We have done this expansion to many countries. So the personal touch is always going to be important. But yeah, definitely in the US, they have these higher expectations around, okay, who are you and what do you have to offer and why should we listen to you when we can listen to all these other people? So yeah, that matters definitely.
Also, can you tell me about a time where you totally screwed it up? Where you just like cocked up massively in the US? And what did you learn from that cock up?
I was worried where you go with that question, and then I'm worried when you finished it as well. That's no, because there are so many things to choose. You get it really wrong all the time. You work your backside off to learn all the ropes and try and be a good founder and a good business leader in the UK, and you go to the US and none of the same rules apply. And so I think I should just tell the truth. This is a pretty bad one. I didn't realize that the notice period in the US was any different in the employment agreements that we were putting across. I also didn't realize that I shouldn't really be giving out these lengthy employment agreements that we get in the UK and Europe. Most employment agreements like half a page. So number one, I was spooking all these excellent candidates that were coming from Google or Facebook or this, but like, why the hell do I have to read through all this pack? It should just be a paragraph and I sign it and we're done. And number two, I was talking to a very talented colleague who handed in their notice to move across the country and wanted to work somewhere else where we couldn't accommodate. And they said, well, I'll be gone in 2 weeks. And I was absolutely certain that everybody had a 3-month notice period, like everything else. And of course, on the flip side of notice, probation doesn't really exist. So most states are at will employment, which means people can leave very quickly. You can also terminate role very quickly. So for me, that was like a real baptism of fire. I learned that one the hard way in the early days, for sure.
May?
I think it was to do with when we got corporates. So classic corporate, they do it here, it's amazing. We're in Spain, it's amazing. Let's do the whole of New York. We'll pay you £500. And I've got like a few people and I'm stretching them already. So I think at the beginning, positioning like how the business is run in the sense of like, we can do this area for you first, and not promise like, okay, we can do in this, because they kind of never listen. You know, they'll go, yeah. And the next thing you know, they've asked Milwaukee and I'm like, where the hell's that? Do you know, apart from, if anyone knows Wayne's World, that's the only place that I know it from. And I'd say there's that kind of perception they want everything big at once, and they're very, if you have a tech business, they're very concerned if they're big kind of companies, they're really worried about your stack and if it collapses. So I think if you go straight away in and show how they need you rather than copying it, or you can hold the stack, you can hold the volumes of business that's coming in. I think that would have been something that I would have articulated a bit earlier on in the conversation and been a bit more blunt at the beginning and going, I know your concerns will be X, Y, Z, and this is how we cover it. Because they don't tell you, and a lot of times they'll have a meeting, so everybody will say yes to your first meeting, and then kind of ghost you a little bit. So you've got to be prepared for that. There's no real, like, no. So getting to understand that dynamic as well, I think takes a bit of while. And at first you're really excited about getting, someone VP or global or whatever, and you're like, it's going to happen. And then, and then they kind of disappear off the face of the earth. Yeah. So, it's a big one.
There's an obvious one that I think we should bring up just so everybody's aware of it, which is, and I hold my hand up, made this mistake the first time, just didn't raise enough money. Just turned up with the same war chest that you turn up when you're building a business in London. And to your point, made me think of it, is such a bloody big place, and people expect such different packages. You've just got to really calibrate your brain and think really big. You're not going to make it through the wormhole.
But is that by the same logic? Do you just need to be like quite a lot better, and actually
at life, or
just basically like as a business at life, like the level of like red tooth and claw capitalism and like excellence at the like upper echelons of US business does seem to me to be just like quite ferocious, and actually is like nice European business. You end up getting eaten alive.
I disagree with it. I had a call yesterday in San Francisco, and the guy couldn't even put two words together properly and didn't know like how scaling works. And he was in an innovation department, for startup in the Valley. And I think there's this misconception that we kind of worship everybody from startup world in the US. And, don't get me wrong, there's like really unique people that are very well connected and got big money. But I think you've got to just believe in yourself and have your own confidence and work out your path that way. Definitely be a bit, it's not about being aggressive, it's about being more direct, like I see you've got this, and this in your report, and I can offer you this, and this. It's pretty much in the first couple of lines of the conversation. There's no like chit chat. And actually it saves you a lot of time. I wouldn't say everybody is amazing out there. I think,
As everywhere, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and true to say, there's a ton of excellent talent that from what I've seen, the colleges, the universities in the States, particularly the top flight ones. Number one, there's just so much more, such a larger country. You meet many more people that have been to these things. And number two, talent's excellent. Yes, people are very good at presenting themselves, positioning themselves, but just the common like belief in oneself to achieve and to push and to work hard and all that stuff. I found people much more willing in the US. So I don't think you have to be any better or any worse than anywhere else. I think to the point like confidence, directness, all that jazz. I think, and the big thing that I want everyone in the room to take from this is like definitely go. If you've got a business that you think is a tool appropriate to be in the US, all these things, yes, they're challenges and it's good to talk about the hard stuff, but the upside of this country where they speak the same language, they're relatively willing to embrace from the UK, it's so far outweigh the downs.
Do you think it's easier from the UK than it is from like other countries in the world? Do you have like a UK? Is there a UK? Not premium, but are they like
I don't know what you ladies. I don't necessarily think it's that much easier.
No.
Language is a natural one, but big one again is I wish I spoke Spanish. The number of business in the US that Spanish is such a prevalent second language in the US. Really big benefit. So I don't think it's anything. I think there's a particular advantage for coming to the UK.
I think you've got to think bigger, right? There is actually a perception, like VCs in UK and Europe aren't seen in high regard as we kind of put the VCs in the US. Like there's not many. Yeah. There are good ones, don't get me wrong, but not all VCs are equal, in that thing. So there's quite a snobbery on that as well. So I think think of your cap table and where you want to be if you are taking VC money, because the perception is like real. If they don't like who's on your cap table, that might be the reason they don't invest in you or give you money in the States. So there's that as well a little bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So you're saying that there are only so many European VCs that have the respect across the pond.
Yeah.
And is that just ones that are connected, or just like the top flight ones you might imagine?
I think it's just connected, success rate, they've got a lot more operational experience in the US. Like the UK, there was a report out last year, there's only 4% of VCs in the UK that have operational experience. So, ideally you want a VC with operational experience because they understand business and they know all the pitfalls when you're starting out, and they're more patient with you. They can give you a bit more insight sometimes. So they've just got more years under their belt, and the success, obviously, it's a numbers game, right? And there's a few that have done very well here, and they've got a good reputation, and they've probably made an effort to go and create relationships because they're on the next rounds and so on. But definitely there's a snobbery in the market, I'd say.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Dana, I cut you off earlier. You were about to make a point, I believe, about like regulation and the challenges of regulation.
Yeah,
in the US.
that's correct.
That's
correct.
This is obviously something that, in a sense, is financial regulation is like specific to you guys, and not everyone will share that. But like, lots of people will be doing stuff that is regulated in some way, shape, or form. So please.
Yeah, absolutely. And doesn't only have to be about financially regulated businesses. There are so many other industries that are also subject to being regulated, being authorized to operate. And that's one of the things that makes it really, really challenging and is completely different about operating in the US, and is the fact that you have federal laws and you have state laws, and you need to start by navigating what type of license or authorization do I need, and is this something that I get at federal level, which probably is going to be a long and difficult process, or is this something that I need to get authorization and be regulated in each of the states where I want to be offering my products or services, which again is going to be an incredibly long and complicated process. So in the case of Wise, we went for what is called money transmitter licenses. And as of today, we have 49 states with our own license, but this is a process that has taken us between 5 to 6 years. So understanding that you're going from how we used to operate from a financial regulation perspective, in which we had one license in the UK, and this gave us passport rights to operate in the rest of the European Union. And now we move that to having one license in Belgium and passport rights to the rest of the European Union, versus going to the US and having to understand state by state, having to understand the regulation that applies in each of these states, building relationships with the state regulators, but at the same time understanding how would the federal level impact what you're doing as a regulated business. And not only in the financially regulated aspect, but going back to hiring. Recently, I went through this situation in which we found a candidate that we wanted to hire in New York, but this person was in San Francisco. And because he had his family there, he couldn't relocate straight away. So I thought, okay, it's fine if you start working remotely. We're all working remotely. So how about you start, and then we work through your relocation in the next couple of months. And everything seemed very straightforward to me until we spoke with our people team, our HR team, and they helped me understand, well, the day someone starts working in California, then we need to pay taxes to the state of California. And to do that, we will need to hire another person to manage payroll and paying the taxes. So the answer is, you rather wait for the person to relocate to New York. And that's crazy, right? Because you would imagine, well, if I hire someone that is in Brighton, they can start there and eventually commute to London. But yeah, it's not the case in this massive country divided by states.
You also did a giant expansion, I believe, a giant expansion into Brazil and other parts of Latin America, right? Or at least, how did that compare to the? Did you feel like that was easier or harder? What was how did that shine a light onto the challenges of the US?
I mean, I would say that's why I said earlier, is hard expanding to any country where you expand, and each one is going to have things that make it easier, but also things that make it more difficult. So taking Brazil as an example, it was easier in the sense that we were dealing with one central regulator, but even then it took us years to get our license. So maybe it was similar time that it took us to get the 49 licenses in the US, but at least we were building the relationship with one single regulator. In terms of language, well, it's obvious you need to speak the local language, so then you need to speak Portuguese and acquire talent. It is easier to go to markets like Brazil or Latin America or emerging markets as a UK company versus going to the US, because then in the US you're seen as another one, as you were saying, versus going to emerging markets, somehow you're seeing as, okay, you're the UK company and we're going to be willing to talk to you, and they take for granted that there's some innovation that you're going to bring to this market, which is not going to be the case necessarily in the US to start with.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to questions in just a minute. Oh, we've already got one. So, sod my question I was going to ask. Yours would be more interesting. Did you have a question? Please, yeah. Wait, there's a mic coming.
So it's just a simple one of going to the US with companies like Boundless existing, which allow you to hire talent anywhere. Will this actually be a problem in the future? And in your mind, based on the way that tech is being built, will you actually need like HR teams and people teams in the future? To all three of you.
I think it's an interesting one. And it's a really good point. It's the stuff you don't want to think about when you're all excited about opening your first office in the US and you want to win your customers, all that stuff. The last thing, certainly I am exposing myself, the last thing I want to think about is all the admin that goes behind it. I want to do the glorious stuff of winning the business. But it's real. What Dana was saying is real. I encountered a similar thing. I couldn't believe that you had to have payroll in different states and all this different jazz. And of course it makes sense when you think about it. And so on a personal note, I don't think that problem's going away anytime soon. In fact, if there's one observation I had from spending a lot of time in the US, and May, I don't know what you think, but the states aren't that good at collaborating and getting stuff done on a national level. They like having their own rules and procedures and all that jazz, and for some good reason as well. But I don't see that going away. And so, yeah, lots of platforms out there where you can hire people anywhere, and they have a purpose. I would be a little cautious about rushing and making that like the strategy.
Yeah, and I agree. And even here, they're clamping down. I mean, you know, very soon you're going to have more NI in the UK because of COVID. And one thing that, you know, my team, like I had an employee move from the UK. She's been here 2 years and she's moved about to South Africa. So she works from us in South Africa. So the transition and inland revenue, and you've got to be careful if they're on holiday somewhere, but they're working because you're okay with them working there. You know, they're going to be clamping down on that. And you've got to be really careful how many hours they're out of their own countries and states. So I think it's actually going to be worse now because everybody is remote working and tax needs to be collected for quite a few things now. So yeah, I would definitely spend money on lawyers and HR if you can afford the best you can get, really.
You, sir, just there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. We're actually in the process of launching in the US, so have loads of questions, but going to leave it to just one. So I'm interested to understand, do either of you have, probably directed at Alistair and May, have co-founders? And how did you make the decision of whether both of you would move or if it would just be one, and how, yeah.
Do you want to answer it?
I think that question's a plant because it's just so on point. So I don't know if my co-founder had been in your ear to ask this question, but yeah, I had a brilliant business partner, multiple businesses we've done together, Adam, and the decision was really simple. I've been out in the US already. Some of it comes down to practicality, like you know, who can get the visa the easiest, and who can kind of get out there and family and life and all that stuff. But one thing, just for free, if anybody's got co-founder or business partners, living in the US, it is, for the most part, especially in the early days, absolutely awesome, and have an expectation that the other person will probably want to come and try it too. And so my partner, Adam, I was living in New York, and Adam came and relocated to LA for a while. And the joke on the side is that we didn't have any office or customers in LA. He was just having an awesome life and being very creative there as well. But yeah, it's a real thing. It happens, and I think it's good to talk about it and have expectations set in advance. I don't know.
Well, I just had a chat with myself because I didn't really have a choice. But really, like as a founder, I'm passionate, and I believe like we can be global in a couple of years. So for me, it's not really. I like to be nomadic anyway, you know, and my family here are used to it. And you know, in the early days, I'd treat it like a bit of a holiday, go over and work and add a couple of days on, and kind of spend a lot of time on my own, going on holiday until someone said when I actually went on holiday, like, "Are you going with anyone?" I'm like, "What?" That's the thing of going with friends. But it was a no-brainer for me. For me, it's like if you want to really do US properly, you have to, you know, you make so many sacrifices as founders anyway. To me, that wasn't really a sacrifice. It was more a case of like you just got to change all the time, be really flexible. It doesn't mean I'm there permanently, right, for the future. I could be anywhere in the future, right? But I think early days for sure, because you get really the foundations, you can feel it.
Thanks for the question. Do come find us. I mean, come find them even afterwards. Yes, man at the back there.
Yeah, I'm also, thank you so much for this. It's super interesting what you guys sharing here. And I have also lots of questions, but I just, maybe just two quick ones on the hiring thing. Why don't you just get like a recruitment agency who's familiar there, and then is that too expensive, or that will make everything so much easier? That will be one question. And the other question is, in terms of locating, is there anything apart from that you want to be in New York or you want to be in LA, any reasons why could you not just pick like a cheap place, or where maybe the talent is like you can't attract talent in the middle of nowhere? Let's say like if you will come to UK but you want to go to up north somewhere, or you set up shop in Guildford. I don't know if there's any boring towns, but everything is like half as priced.
Yeah.
I mean, just logistically, this.
I can go ahead. So on the using a local recruitment agency, yes, we still do that currently. Whether it is expensive, yes, everything is expensive in the US. So I can walk you concretely through the experience of working with recruitment agencies in the US versus here. Usually a recruitment agency in the US will ask for a retainer, and they will ask for a retainer and exclusivity. So that means no matter if you end up hiring through referrals or someone approaches you, then the recruitment agency will get a fee, and usually they will charge a percentage of the salary that the candidate is going to get for the next year after they join. So it is expensive. Of course, it's something that you need to do to understand and find the talent, and talent are very well connected with the recruiters. So actually, they would mostly talk to the recruiters and ask them or let them know, I'm looking to move, I'm looking for this type of company. So if you're not connected with a recruitment agency, maybe it's going to be harder. But yes, it's going to be expensive. And the second question, I forgot what the second question.
Why can't you just live anywhere? You know, in somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
affordable and-
Well, yeah, that's a great question, because you could incorporate your company and set up an office in the middle of nowhere, but then the talent is not going to get there. So people are willing to live in New York, in LA, in San Francisco, and if you go and open an office in the middle of nowhere, then it's going to be much, much harder to find the talent that you're looking for, or convince people that are based in New York to relocate to these places is going to be nearly impossible.
Yeah, in the early days, pull an Uno Reverso on this expensive recruitment sector. Find the best headhunter and hire them into your business. They'll save you money in the long run.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, that's all we have time for. But I, for one, have learned just an enormous amount from this. I think some of the things, although there are about 15 different little insights, but I mean, it is expensive, yes. Watch different employment laws, be wary of it, notice periods, like stuff that's basic in America, not here. Think big, raise big. Lots of people will come and just be like, well, why don't you 10x that? And I think that's like the American attitude, and you should probably embrace that. Embrace like American stuff. Hire American people. Being like cute and British does not fly.
Not even cute, yeah.
It's like cute-ish and British. Put an American flag on your website.
Try it.
Basic, try it. But crucially, absolutely do it. It's the biggest market. It's the most exciting market. And if you're a founder, move the hell out there because it's really, really, really fun. So that's super insightful. That's what I learned. Lots of other things as well. But I really appreciate it. Can we give a round of applause to our excellent panel? Thank you.
Well done, mate. Well done, guys.